Welcome to the Killer Author Club. 3 best-selling authors talking about killing, of the fictional kind, with the best thriller and suspense authors in the business. Killer conversations, killer cocktails, and killer guests with your hosts, Kimberly Bell, Heather Gutenkopf, and Kara Ruda. This is the Killer Author Club.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Killer Author Club, your favorite haunts for all things murder, mystery, and mayhem. We are so excited to have superstar killer Lisa Unger back in the Killer Author Club hot seat to talk about all things served him right. Will she survive? Will we? We have tons of questions and a heap of killer fun planned, so buckle up and get ready to kill the lights. I'm Killer Heather Gutenkopf.
And I'm Killer Lisa Unger.
And I'm Killer Kimberly Bell. Killer Kara's away on a book tour adventure for We Were Never Friends, but she'll be back with us very soon.
And before we dive into Lisa's fabulous book, a couple of quick PSAs. Tonight's show will be available this Friday as a podcast with bonus content just for listeners. Find the links at killerauthorclub.com. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter so you're the first to hear all our killer breaking news. Also, don't miss this Thursday's Facebook takeover with James Latoa. He'll be jumping into the clubhouse to dish on illusion of truth and answer your burning questions. And yes, there will be giveaways. And now, Kimberly, will you introduce our killer guest?
I would love to. Lisa Unger is a New York Times best-selling and award-winning author whose psychological thrillers have sold millions of copies worldwide. Her books have been published in more than 30 languages and have been featured on best of lists from The Today Show, Entertainment Weekly, and Goodreads. Unger's work is known for deep character exploration, twisted plots, and propulsive suspense. She lives in Florida with her family. Welcome, Lisa. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here with you.
I know. She's back in the hot seat. What is this? Second time? Third time?
I feel like it might even be my third time.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
And we have a lot to talk about tonight for Served Him Right. But could you tell us, just to give us a quick little hit about what the book is about?
Yeah. So I actually just got my bound copy.
So pretty.
It's got this down the middle to communicate that it's a thriller. So when we open the cover, we're basically at a brunch. Anna, Vera is throwing a brunch for her sister Anna, and it's not an ordinary brunch. It's an exorcism where Vera and Anna have gathered all their friends, and the intention of the brunch is that everybody there should just delete, unfollow, goodbye to any connection they have in social media to Anna's ex-boyfriend, Paul. So he's not a nice guy. He doesn't have a ton of friends. And by the time the brunch is nearly over, there's a knock at the door, and it's a police detective, and Paul has been found murdered. And Anna, who has a very dark and dangerous history with men, is, of course, immediately the prime suspect. And that served him right.
Yes.
I loved it. Readers, get chatty and drop your questions for our killer guest in the comments. But in the meantime, first, Heather, what are we drinking tonight?
Oh, yeah. So tonight's drink is The Cure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice graphic.
I love that name.
Chosen this as your mocktail tonight. Tell us about The Cure.
Yeah, so it could be a mocktail or a cocktail. So it's watermelon juice, lime, club soda or like Topo Chico or something like that, and a mint sprig. And if you don't want it to be a mocktail, then you just add a shot of Grey Goose, right? I mean,
or tequila would be delicious in it.
Tequila, right? My husband said rum. He thought rum would be a good add to that. I'm just a vodka girl, so that's always my go-to. So yeah, so this is it'll cure what ails you as a mocktail or a cocktail.
Sounds really good. So we need to raise our glasses.
Yes.
Cheer.
Cheers.
Congratulations
Cheers
on the new book. But
Thank
also,
you.
another big day for you too. You have a paperback release. Can you tell us a little bit about that quick?
I do, yeah. Close Your Eyes and Count to 10 just released in paperback today. And this is about a game of extreme hide and seek on an abandoned island. And single mom Adele goes to try to win $1 million because she's, kind of struggling to take care of her kids. And when a storm blows in, then it's not about who's going to win $1 million. It's about who's going to survive the night.
So good. You have the best premises for your book.
Thank you.
I know, right? Okay, you guys, we created the Killer Author Club so readers like you could get up close and personal with your favorite thriller writers. Our upcoming lineup is stacked with amazing killers. Danielle Girard, she's coming in 2 weeks. Will Dean, Jillian McAllister, Deborah Goodrich Royce, and so many more. For dates, times, past episodes, and the rest of our lineup, surf to killerauthorclub.com. But tonight, it's all about Served Him Right. Here's what some of Lisa's early reviewers had to say about the book. Sally Hepworth, Killer Sally, New York Times bestselling author of The Soulmate, says, a ticking time bomb, deliciously wicked with a slow drip of dread that builds to a boil. Served Him Right is darkly funny, deliciously twisted, and entirely addictive. I devoured it. Booklist says the combination of revenge, generational trauma, and girl power makes this a fun and twisted tale, perfect for fans of Lisa Jewell and Shari LaPena and angry women everywhere. I love that.
That's great.
And Kirkus just gave it a star, I heard tonight.
That's right.
Amazing. So, Lisa, we know you are a highly skilled and wickedly twisted killer. And now we need to know your answer to the killer question, where do you kill?
Oh, I mean, at home, of course. Because it's always the people closest to you that, turn out to be the people you should be watching the most closely.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So you talked a little about how Served Him Right opens with this exorcism and then exorcism brunch, where they're purging the ex-boyfriend from their lives. So where did this idea come from? Was it from the Housewives?
What, for the exorcism or
all the fighting about you have to unfollow, and why didn't you unfollow?
It's not from the Housewives. I actually I know that I read about the exorcism somewhere, like because I'm constantly reading, right? And I don't always mark where I read things, so I know where that I read about it, and it was but it was for me it's always like a collision, right? It's a collision of ideas, and in this case there was a news story, without getting into that because it's really not about that, but there was a news story about a woman who made a brunch for her family, and 2 of the people walked away from that table and they died. And it came up later that somebody else in her past had been poisoned. He didn't die, but he was in a coma for a good long time. And then in the case of this particular brunch, 2 of her guests did pass. And so what really fascinated me about that was the idea that you would sit down to a meal with people that you trust, and you would expect to be nourished and in a safe space, and instead you're poisoned. So the substance that you thought was going to nourish you does quite the opposite. So that was the big piece, and it kind of collided with this ongoing obsession that I've had with plants. So I have I tend to have an obsession, something I'm doing a lot of research on and doing a lot of reading about. And so, this really complicated relationship that we have to the natural world, where, so many of the things in nature that can heal us can also harm us, and that we rely on the planet for everything, and nourishment, but we're also subject to its whims. When a storm comes, or you're subjected to the elements, there is no man versus nature. You lose every single time. And so that kind of had been kicking around in my head for a while as well. So when ideas collide, that's where the novel comes from. And those were the two pieces that kind of collided for the novel. And then this idea of the exorcism, because I'm always interested in technology, right? And it's not that I'm interested in the technology itself, but just the way it rewrites the way we relate to each other. That's what interests me about technology. And so this idea of you break up with someone, and then you're kind of living, if you're of a certain age, you're living your life kind of on social media. And then you constantly have to see this other person, and your friends are friends with that person. And you're having to see everybody's posts. You can kind of see why, a certain type of person may ask that at the end of the relationship, okay, let's you no longer I don't want to see him on your feed. So you have to make a choice, right? You have to choose, do I keep connected to this person, or do I stay connected to my friend? And so I found that piece really interesting too. So it was kind of a collision of all those things that led to Served Him Right.
Yeah. I love it. On The Housewives, it caused a lot of drama.
So is that a thing on The Housewives, that you have to unfriend people when you break up?
Well, on this particular housewife, it was the Miami Housewives. Oh my God. It went through the whole season.
It's funny.
It's nonstop drama, nonstop.
You mentioned that you're very interested in botanicals. So are you a gardener, and are your neighbors afraid?
Yeah, I'm actually not a gardener at all. I'm not. I don't have a beautiful I mean, I have a fantasy of being a gardener, but so instead of actually doing it, I'm just gonna write about it. It's the same to me. What happens in the real world and what happens on the page, there's not that much of a difference. So in fiction, I am a gardener. In real life, I am not.
That is so funny, because that's the exact case for me. I could tell you all about flowers and everything, but I could keep one alive to save my life.
Well, I was really interested in the idea of floriography, which is the Victorian language of flowers, which is it's basically kind of a pseudoscience. But it's completely a pseudoscience. It's not scientific at all. But they used, these different flowers to kind of express certain things. Tansy is resentment, and lavender means distrust, and all these things. So you can make these bouquets from from the floriography book and give a message. And it was in that way, in Victorian times, where emotions were very repressed, this was a way that you could express yourself. So I found that pretty interesting too.
I love that.
Yeah.
So female friendship and sisterhood are big themes in the novel, especially the relationship between Anna and Vera.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? And tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, likewise, in the way that I'm not a gardener, I also don't have a sister. But I have a brother, not the same, of course, but I have a lot of very powerful, deep female friendships that kind of, span decades. And it's that kind of, I have a very good friend, who we're constantly joking that if she's the one, if she calls in the middle of the night and says I have a body, I'm coming, with my car. We're gonna
I know how to hide it.
We're gonna figure out how to deal with that, right? And it's that kind of deep, sort of acceptance. And Anna and Vera, on the page, for me, were very alive. They had they had this incredibly traumatic event as children, and then they're kind of ripped from the only life that they know, even though it is, not such a great life. They're ripped from the only life that they know, and they go to live with their Aunt Agnes. And like, that drive, that's where I first kind of saw them, and that drive in the back of Agnes's car, like, how they were already like figuring out how to survive. And that how Anna presents as like, the wild, angry one, and that Vera is very like measured and controlled, but that there's like, Anna's like always accusing her, like, well, there's a beast in a cage in there, right? And maybe there is. And so like that kind of relationship, how they see each other completely, and yet, there's plenty of judgment on Vera's part, but also this kind of deep devotion, and they're literally capable of anything, either one of them, when it comes to protecting the other. So I was really interested in that kind of devotion, which I feel like, not that I'm not completely devoted to my husband. Honestly, I wouldn't even be on here if he wasn't here. But like the devotion that women have, that women have to each other, is something very powerful, or at least it has been that in my life.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to the question, as this investigation into this murder takes place, there's this idea of a secret network of like different forms of justice,
Right.
where it isn't our typical Law and Order that
That's
we
right.
See on SVU or anything. So where did that come from, and what drew you to infusing that age-old form of justice to this book?
Well, I mean, I guess at the heart, this book is about female power. It's about how it's wielded, how it's been quashed, how it's hidden, how often women are in a position where, they're not in, they don't even have dominion over their own bodies. And not to get political, but like there's this this type of expectation of the woman as someone who nourishes, who gardens, who takes those ingredients and who cooks. But there's also an ancient knowledge that women have, or that certain types of women have, where these plants that you can use to nourish can also be used to harm, to punish. Like there's this idea of like, in the book, that the only difference between poison and medicine is the dose. Right. So like that, so I was very interested in this idea of the herbalist, and then and it's funny because I noticed a lot in, in some of the reviews and stuff, that they kind of everybody kind of immediately goes to the idea that it has like witchy vibes, which I think is really interesting because, it's like whenever whenever female power is being displayed, it's often like, oh, she's a witch, or she's evil, or she's this. And I don't really think that is the case, but women, certain types of women do have this knowledge of the natural world that is available to everybody, but only some people are paying attention. So that was kind of the way I, sort of saw this group of women who have these various different like kinds of things going on, but they're not witches, they're herbalists. They're, they create potions, there's like, crystals and different kinds of, items that they make for protection, but it's not necessarily that they're witches. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, let's see. I saw a funny question on here. Oh yeah, Renee. Renee's question. Killer Lisa, are you ever worried that your husband will get an idea from your incredible stories? Does he sleep with one eye open?
I don't know if he does. I think he's okay. He's pretty okay. I mean, I'm not worried about him. He may be worried about me, but he hides it very well.
So good. So long-time readers would be excited to see a familiar setting mentioned in this book.
Yes.
You do a callback to the Hollows.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a Hollows cameo in every book. Like I haven't set a book directly in the Hollows in a long time. But it's always like some books are like what I like to think of as like Hollows adjacent. They're close to the Hollows. And so that's a little bit the case here. And so the Hollows is like always conspiring to get itself into every book. And so I feel like at some point there's going to be another there's going to be another Hollows book, and that like all these little pieces that have kind of threaded through the other books they're gonna find their way into that. Like there are certain characters that have like kind of an arc. You know, they appear in certain places. Like Jones Cooper pops up. He was in Last Girl Ghosted, and then Grady Crow is another one who kind of pops up now and then. He just popped up in my short story that'll publish in June. And so I feel like, and they all have like a tiny little bit of progression every single time that they pop up. So I feel like at some point when there's going to be when the new Hollows book comes, or when the next Hollows book comes, there's going to be like a little bit of that progression from all these books. But yeah, it does tend to pop up. And Little Valley is kind of Hollows adjacent. Like Little Valley turned up when I wrote Christmas Presents. So when I wrote Christmas Presents, I really thought Christmas Presents was going to be in the Hollows. Like when I first thought of the story, like it was there. And then when I started writing, it just wouldn't go into the Hollows. Like it just didn't fit there. And I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be the Hollows book. And then it wasn't. So it was like, so Little Valley has kind of like popped up in various different places.
That's amazing that your brain works that way.
So there's a lot that goes on in there. Like there's so much.
A lot of moving pieces. So before we went live, we were talking a little bit about your work with ITW, the International Thriller Writers. And you're such a huge support to fellow authors. And you have such a level-headed approach to an industry that has, as you know, many ups and downs. How do you stay so grounded? And talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with ITW.
Yeah, I'll talk a little. I will talk about that. So I've been the co-president along with my bestie Greg Hurwitz for, I guess we're going on 6 years. He's has one more year in than I do. And ITW is an organization that is devoted to supporting authors, educating authors at every level of their career. So if you're a debut author, if you're an author that's in the middle of her career, if you're even, already a huge bestseller, there is something for you at ITW. If you're an aspiring author who wants to learn more about the craft, there's all these different online education opportunities, as well as our huge conference in New York City every year, Thriller Fest. And so I feel like it's if you're an aspiring thriller writer, there is no other organization that you would want to belong to. I mean, there's many other writing organizations, but this is probably one of the best in terms of the way we connect you to other authors, the way we educate, and the way our conference is set up so that you can meet editors and agents and other authors and be part of this community. I really do think that mystery and thriller writers are like the best people. We love each other. We love each other so much.
And we so supportive, right? Everybody's
we are. Yeah, we take care of each other. We show up for each other. We promote each other. And the conference really, I think, really typifies that. It's a very safe conference. We have a security team. We make sure that everybody who comes feels welcome. If you're coming to Thriller Fest for the first time, we know that authors we're introverts, right? Like this writers conferences are like, full of people who would rather be literally any place else, right, than in a conference. but when we get together as a group, there's like, there's kind of like a magical connection. And if you want to come to Thriller Fest but you don't have a friend, we'll find a friend for you. We have a buddy system so that if you came to your first conference, you wouldn't feel left alone. And it's like important. I think if you want to write, it's important to continue your education. If you are writing, it's important to continue your education into the craft and to the business always. So yeah, I feel really passionately about it.
Yeah. Well, it shows. And you've been just a steadfast member of the community for a long time. I know you talked me off of many ledges, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, my philosophy about the business is that, this is big water, right? We're in big water. This is like, there are these amazing, amazing dizzying highs and these crushing lows in this business. If you have a long career, then you know what I mean. And it is okay. As a writer, all you can control is what you do on the page.
Yeah.
So every day we wake up and we get to work, right? We work on our novel. It doesn't matter whether the best thing happens or the worst thing happens in that day. You just keep returning to the page. And that's what has kept me sane.
Yeah.
This idea that every day I feel like I can be a better writer than I was yesterday. And that's my goal. That's my only goal. Right? I don't have any other big goals. Like that's the goal. And, I came from the industry. Like my first job was in publishing when I was 22 years old. So I understand the industry in a way that most authors who come into the industry don't have that publishing background. So I think a lot of things are very surprising.
Shocking.
I came in with such low expectations, and I have never been disappointed. So, I mean, like, I just think I think, and as all writers, like, we all do what we can do and, want to do for ourselves and for the promotion opportunities that are available to us now. But we should never forget that we are not influencers, we are writers. Right. And then if you can remember that, you return to the page every day, then you will stay sane-ish. Sane-ish. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, we sure do appreciate you. And we are so excited for the world to get their hands on your book.
I hope they love it.
They will. How could they not?
Yeah. I'm going to hold it up again because isn't it so pretty?
Because it's gorgeous.
Ooh, it's gorgeous.
So Killer Lisa is giving away a copy of Served Him Right to a lucky U.S. viewer. It doesn't matter where you're watching. We scour the comments everywhere we stream, but please make sure you shout out where you're from when you answer this question. Yes or no? Would you attend a post-breakup exorcism-style brunch with a group of friends? Poison optional. So that's for our listeners.
Poison optional. Forget it. I'm not going to that one.
And no wrong answers here. How awesome is that?
Good luck.
Okay, so the Killers are big fans of independent booksellers and want to send them all the love and support. Tonight, Lisa has chosen Tombolo Books in St. Petersburg, Florida to highlight. Lisa, tell us why you love them so.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. So Kelsey Jaganow is like the very best events coordinator. She's just one of the most excellent, orchestrators of fantastic events ever. Owners, Candace and Alsace are unbelievably supportive. They were for a couple years in St. Pete, they were just like a pop-up. So they would come to my events and they would, sell like off-site. And then like in the November, I guess, December before COVID, they opened their store. And it was like they got their first store. It was absolutely beautiful. And then COVID hit. And they like found a place for themselves in St. Pete. They would deliver books on their bicycles. And they just, created this kind of really special community for readers in St. Pete. You make sure everybody, got their books and all of that. And so they're just such a great store. I just appreciate them so much. I'm very lucky, very blessed to have two amazing stores in my area. The other one is Oxford Exchange in Tampa, another beautiful, super supportive store. The folks at Tombolo are just amazing.
Love it. Well, I just dropped the link in the comments so you can order Served Him Right along with any of the other books on your wish list.
That's right.
And obviously the Killers, we love to read, and we love it when readers share what you're reading in our Facebook group. So post pictures, write reviews, ask for recommendations, and give yours. So tonight we're wondering what have you been reading and loving lately?
Okay, so I have a couple of books that I'm gonna, not mine. Here they are. Okay. So my co-president and Bessie Greg Hurwitz, Anti-Hero. I think this is the 11th installment of his Orphan X series, but you can start anywhere. He's one of those writers that he just he writes really cool action, lots of tech, but he's also just like a beautiful writer. And his character development, his character arcs for some of his people over the course of the series is just, second to none. He's just a great writer. And then
Oh yeah.
I Came Back for You from
Oh,
Kate
yeah.
White. This
Love
is just
Kate.
about to come
Killer
out. Yep,
Kate.
Kate's wonderful. She's another one of my besties. also a great writer. And this is about a mom who, she's lost her daughter, and she thought the case was closed, and then somebody kind of turns up out of nowhere, and she realizes that maybe what she thought happened didn't happen, and so she has to kind of go back into her very painful past to figure out the truth. So just a really great book, and Kate is an amazing person. And then I had the pleasure of sharing a stage at Oxford Exchange with Adele Parks, our beautiful mess. Really just an excellent book about a family with a lot of secrets. It's really hard to talk about it because some of the stuff is so just jaw-dropping. This is like really a masterclass in thriller writing. Excellent book. So yeah, that's what I'm reading. And I'm always reading like a lot of nonfiction books as well. So I'm also reading just finished a book called The Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller. And it's about the effect of spirituality on our brains. And it's kind of a mind-blowing book. So yeah.
Amazing. So many books, so little time, right?
I know, right? I mean, the pile is like very tall.
Well, I've got even a couple more to add to the pile because we have two fabulous new releases we wanted to celebrate tonight.
Oh, yeah.
First, Dollface by Lindy Ryan.
Oh,
Barbie meets Scream in this delightfully murderous novel that is equal parts scathing and salacious. Dollface will win you over with its gossip and gore, one body at a time.
I love it.
And we also have The Midnight Taxi by Yosha. Oh no, I'm going to murder this last name.
Gunasekera. Yeah.
The Midnight Taxi. The Midnight Taxi is a lively and voice-driven debut that follows Siri, a Sri Lankan American New York City cab driver who is accused of murdering one of her passengers.
Love it.
Lindy is giving away 2 copies of Dollface, and Yoshi is giving away 2 copies of The Midnight Taxi, all to U.S. viewers. If you want in, tell us in the comments and make sure to share where you're from. And because we're all about shamelessly plugging our own murdery fun, don't miss the Killer's latest reads.
Kara Scott, We Were Never Friends, a sorority reunion that takes a very, very dark turn.
And speaking of deadly parties, Heather is serving up the perfect hosts, an over-the-top gender reveal party that explodes in more ways than one.
So good.
And finally, Kimberly's taking you on a deadly European getaway in the expat affair. 2 Americans, the glittering diamond trade, in danger in Amsterdam.
Nice.
And we want to say a big killer thanks to Book Reporter for sharing the murdery love. Stay up to date on bookish news and events at bookreporter.com. And finally, Lisa, we have some great news for you.
Mm-hmm.
You have survived again.
Thank goodness. I wasn't sure this time we were going to make it through.
Congratulations. And tell us where our listeners and viewers can find you.
I'm sorry, you said where can they find me? Oh my God, I'm ridiculously easy to find. You can find me on my website, lisaunger.com, on Instagram at LAUnger, Facebook, author Lisa Unger. I know I'm still on, what is it now? Is it X? Is it Twitter? I'm still on there. I don't know. TikTok. TikTok is like probably I do best on Instagram. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I'm so easy to find. It's ridiculous.
I love it. And all the links we're guessing are on lisaunger.com.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, you guys, that's a wrap on tonight's episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. Don't forget that on Thursday, Killer James Latoile will be taking over our Facebook with tons of fun and giveaways. So set your alarm and tune in for that. We'll be back in 2 weeks on March 3rd with Danielle Gerard talking all things Pinky Swear. Until then, you can catch us wasting entirely too much time on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places Lisa mentioned. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel there. For links, upcoming schedule, past episodes, and merch, head to killerauthorclub.com. Thanks for being part of the club.
That does it for tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to catch our next show live, we're every other Tuesday night on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For times, upcoming schedule, and to catch up on past episodes, visit us at killerauthorclub.com. Happy reading. Now get on out there and kill that TBR.